Before we dive into how to approach your peak week, let's first discuss why we carb load, why we keep water intake on the higher end, the role that sodium plays, what causes water retention, and briefly how to manage aldosterone. Water follows carbs and sodium, and we need both to fill out. Cutting or reducing water early can potentially decrease the ability to carb up and stay full. So during carb loading, an increase of water could be justified. Cutting water early may run the risk of going flat and dehydrating the muscle, as dehydration decreases muscle water. Early water cuts are also quickly accounted for by the antidiuretic hormone release from the pituitary gland and aldosterone release from the adrenal glands. These are triggered by an increase in sodium concentration in the serum, so a decrease in water and increase in sodium. Keep in mind that once a muscle is glycogen loaded, it can maintain that load for up to 5 days. As far as sodium goes, the glucose transporters in the gut require sodium, so cutting sodium can hamper carb uptake and digestion, causing you to bloat. Cutting sodium can also cause an acute decrease in blood pressure and vascularity. So what causes water retention? Exogenous androgens can create increases in estrogen, leading to water retention. Your main focus here is to manage your androgen to estrogen ratio, knowing that certain compounds such as testosterone and nandrolone increase aldosterone more than other compounds. So we can easily manipulate this through our stack design setup. Next, let's cover what and how often you should be tracking. So 7 to 3 days out from show, you should be taking your photos in the AM, post-training, and in the PM. And with these, you want to track your scale weight with each shot and note the time that the picture was taken. 2 days out up to show day, take pictures in the AM prior to each meal and in the PM, and the same thing here. Track your weight and the time that each photo was taken. When you look your best is what we want to recreate when it comes to show day. All right, so peak week strategies. I'm going to give you 4 options here. The first one is the ideal scenario, and that is when you were ready 1 to 4 weeks out from show. But we know that this is often not possible. Let's just pretend that it is in this scenario. What you're going to do is you're going to move calories to maintenance by increasing your carbs by 10 to 20 grams and fats by 0 to 5 grams. And assess every 3 to 4 days and repeat if your look is improving. Reduce cardio by 5 to 10 minutes per session or steps by 1 to 2,000 per day every week. Keep your food sources, water and sodium intake the same as they have been throughout your prep. Option 2 is a backload. This is when we start loading carbohydrates 1 to 3 days out from show. Provided that you have already gathered the data on how your body responds to refeeds, this method is very predictable, or at least more so than a front load, and is ideal when an athlete has to meet a certain weight class. Typically, we would set carbohydrates at 1 to 3 grams per pound of body weight, although some individuals will require much more than that, while slowing protein and vegetable intake to avoid any digestive discomfort. After this load, the athlete will return back to their maintenance calories if required and for the entirety of their peak week. You should probably just keep sodium intake the same, knowing that it would typically increase in synergy with the food volume, and increase your water intake by around about 25%. Option 3 is a front load. This would be done somewhere between 5 and 7 days out from your show. This is essentially the process of filling up, spilling, drying out, and then doing a small glycogen load. The primary benefit to this is that it allows more time for loading, which can be beneficial for someone who is extremely depleted, and also allows more time to dry out when or if it's required. Obviously, this approach isn't going to be best for someone that has to meet a certain weight class. The manipulations to carbohydrate intake, water, and sodium are the same as the backload, except with a longer period spent at baseline to dry out, and then a second carb load at 1 day out. Here we would have somewhere around half the carbohydrates used in the first load. Option 4 is a fat load. This is the process of filling up intramuscular triglycerides prior to carb loading. The theory is that it helps sustain fullness in your look after carb loading. The cons is that you could experience GI distress from moving between high fat and high carb, and it's also not as likely to help you identify your stage weight look. So you run the risk of spilling over or not being full enough. We don't store much intramuscular triglyceride regardless, and moving someone up with a linear load of carbs with an already adequate fat intake would suffice in bringing up these stores. Glycogen is still the main large contributor to muscle size. However, like I said, having filled triglycerides may mean that the look is more predictable because they stay full longer, so you might be taking less of a risk of underfeeding or burning through your glycogen as quickly. So the timing of the look is more predictable if the time has been taken to do a trial peak week. I do find that this fat loading setup works particularly well for female competitors. So how do we do it? Well, let's pretend the show is on Saturday, because it probably is. Sunday to Tuesday, you're gonna do a fat load at maintenance calories with poly and monounsaturated fats. You want to stay weight neutral here, so you're going to have to adjust your intake day to day based on your data. And you want to keep your proteins at the higher end. On Wednesday, you're going to do a carb load at 15 to 20 grams per kilogram of body weight for females and 20 to 25 grams per kilogram of body weight for male competitors. Thursday, depending on your carb amount and GI distress, you may still be loading on this day. Friday, go to maintenance calories with a mix of fats, proteins, and carbs. And if you're looking spot on, buy a Stirresis and go to maintenance proteins and fats, or increase proteins and decrease fats. Then on show day, consume maintenance protein and fats with carbs before stage. Just keep your food volume low to limit GI inflammation. As far as training manipulations go, for resistance training, do a deload week. In most cases, training volume will likely already be very low, so no set reductions are necessarily needed. Spread your volume out over all days of peak week unless you're already training daily. Keep your rep range at 8 to 15 and avoid going to muscle failure, aiming to keep 1 to 2 reps in the tank. Remember, novelty means muscle damage, so don't go introducing any new movements here. Your last training session should be done 2 days out. For cardio, this is about energy balance and fatigue management. Taper cardio at the start of the week if you are in a position to do so, but 2 days out, cardio is a definite no-no. Just keep in mind that if you drop cardio output too low, then you will experience GI distress. As far as show day goes, if you're your best look in the AM, reduce water in between your meals, but keep the same water intake with your meals. That makes sense. This might be a third to half the normal water intake in between meals. Keep in mind the shows are very unpredictable with stage time, so cutting water out might get you flat. If you look your best in the afternoon, get in as many meals as you did to achieve your best look during your tracking. This might mean that you have to get up really early. Prior to stage, your last meal can be no protein, only carbs and fats, and double your salt intake. Water can be stopped 45 minutes prior to stage to limit bathroom usage. An hour and a half to 2 hours out from stage, reintroduce sodium at 1 gram, carbs, but keep to simple sources like honey, jam, and rice cakes, and have 500 milliliters of water, wait 10 minutes, run your mandatory poses, and then reassess. What happens if you get your period during peak week? Well, estrogen does not cause water retention. Progesterone is the factor here, so increasing it due to direct increases in aldosterone. What you can do is implement 40 to 60 milligrams of telmisartan as an angiotensin blocker, add in 800 milligrams of magnesium split into 2 servings. This will also help with GI dysbiosis. Add in 500 milligrams of potassium split into 2 servings, adding 3 grams of taurine, add in a methylated B complex, and 1 gram of vitamin C 3 times a day, and just have a stool softener and laxative on hand just in case. Regardless of whether or not you have your period on peak week, you also want to have a Gas X on hand for any bloating, a laxative just in case you get constipated, and especially if you're flying out to your show. Antacids, Highlands leg cramps, herbal diuretics. Yet to see much change from using them, but there's no harm in having them there. Some caffeine tablets to increase diuresis and help with the last days of peaking. Sleep aids such as melatonin or Benadryl. Creatine monohydrate and performance supplements can stay in place, and whey protein can stay in place if you've been using it throughout all your prep. As far as pulling PDs go, yohimbine you want to cut 7 days out, clenbuterol 3 days out. You want to have your last injections 5 to 7 days out to limit any inflammation, and all of your orals, thyroid, and AI can continue throughout show. Continue with all your health supplements and just take the last dose 1 day out from show. I'm not going to discuss diuretics here because most are not needed and a worse look is likely to be presented.